Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of March 30th, April 5th, 2025. And this one's going to be a little bit special, even though I'm going to do 3 stories this week, which I normally don't do. This one is mostly going to be focusing on the Switch 2. As some of you are aware, Nintendo had their Switch 2 Direct, which apparently the response to some of the decisions that Nintendo made, certainly, let's just say, can be viewed as both questionable and controversial. But I do want to look at basically my thoughts on after watching the Switch 2 Direct in terms of what I like and what I didn't like. I also want to touch upon basically supposedly the Switch 2 development kit situation, which is an interesting rumor that has popped up, including, and finally one on the Halo, possibly Halo maybe coming to the Nintendo Switch, as there is an interesting report coming out about the possibility that it may not be in its complete form, at least in regards of the rumored possibility of the Master Chief Collection coming to the Nintendo Switch. If you're interested where I got the source of these informations, links will be in the description of this video, assuming you watch this on YouTube. And of course, timestamps will also be in the description as well if there are certain parts of this video you wish to skip to and everything like that. But before we get started though, I do like to do what I have to call is the quick My 2 Cents. Stories that kind of caught my attention, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details. The first one has to do with the reports seemed to indicate that a website for Final Fantasy IX has recently launched. This has sort of, many people are speculating, rumors going around about the possibility we could see a remake or a remaster of Final Fantasy VII-9, which is hailed by many Final Fantasy fans as probably one of the best ones out there, although I've heard, Final Fantasy VII is also, many have considered that the best one out there. We don't know if the remake is in the works or not, though, nothing official. And it remains to be seen if it will go down the same route as the Final Fantasy VII remake games that we have seen so far, or go a completely different route, or if they're just going to clean up some areas here and there. So we'll have to wait and see. We also learned that basically the developers of, at one point, a Halo game for the DS said that basically Nintendo sort of killed the portability game for that one rather than Microsoft. For those who are not familiar, several years ago, or like decades ago and all, there was supposedly footage of what apparently looked like Halo running on the Nintendo DS, though. And supposedly that was in the works or anything like that, but then sort of like faded out and disappeared. And now apparently it seems, just in case, that it seems that Nintendo was the one that killed it, though. Obviously, the market back then was different compared to where we are today and everything like that, where Microsoft and Nintendo, I will say, are on, let's just say, a more friendlier term than it was in the past. Still, that would have been interesting to see a version of Halo running on the Nintendo DS. That would have been really neat to see to a certain degree. We also learned basically NVIDIA put out a statement in regards of what to expect inside the Nintendo Switch 2 following, the Switch 2 Direct presentation. It has been confirmed so far that we know it is using DLSS and AI powered to be exact. And the surprising is to learn how the Switch 2 will also support 4K gaming, though. The DLSS part is certainly the one that interests me the most, because this one has been rumored for quite some time and all. And while it's nice to see that NVIDIA officially confirmed that, it remains to be seen exactly what version or what type of DLSS is being used for the Switch 2. Is it similar or exactly what we see for the PC, for those who game on PC? Or is it something, custom made and everything like that? They also talked about the custom made chip as well, although most are speculating it's the T239 chip that is powering the Switch 2 and all. This is almost very similar to what we saw back in 2017 back in 2016 when the Nintendo Switch was officially announced. They were talking about it was a custom-made chip, but in the end it turned out to be a second iteration of the Maxwell chip that was part of the Tegra X1 line and everything like that. So it's an interesting read nevertheless. And finally, this one broke today. This video will go up on Saturday and all. It's that for those who are hoping to pre-order start taking pre-orders for the Nintendo Switch 2 on April 9th. Apparently, Nintendo has recently put out a statement saying that, excuse me, pre-orders has now been delayed due to the tariffs that President Trump has recently put out on Wednesday and all. There's no word on whether or not pre-orders will go up or not. However, Nintendo seems to still be sticking with the this was announced during the Direct, the June 5th date when the Nintendo Switch 2 will launch, though. This is unfortunate, and call this a political reason or not, call this me expressing my political views, but yeah, a lot of this is on Donald Trump, who basically is now screwing a lot of people over, and now screwing Nintendo fans and gamers alike who are trying to get a Switch 2 or not. Now, it remains to be seen if the price point, which garnished a lot of backlash during the Direct, is one of the reasons, though, but the tariffs is certainly another factor. Although there are reports coming out that supposedly the US and Vietnam are in negotiations to try to get an impasse through this tariff situation. So we'll have to wait and see if something emerges. And of course, one of the reports seem to indicate that Nintendo moved manufacturing for the Switch 2 from China to Vietnam to avoid the tariff situation. But due to what President Trump has done, that has now thrown a wrench in that, though. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out if we do see pre-orders back again. I mean, I won't rule out the possibility that due to the tariffs, though, they could raise the price of the Switch 2 and all, but it's also possible they may not raise the price at all. So we'll have to wait and see. But for now, those who are hoping to pre-order the Switch 2 on April 9th, unfortunately, there's a bit of a disappointment, and you're going to have to be waiting for that, though. It's also possible we may not get a pre-order, and you may have to buy the system outright on June 5th if you're planning to buy one, that is. And in the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cents, we have learned so far that the next Resident Evil movie supposedly will be in the spirits of the games and everything like that. Now, as some of you are aware, the Resident Evil movies has its audience. It's sort of a hit and miss. We know about, the original ones back, in the early 2000s and everything like that, which somewhat has a following, but some folks like it, some folks don't. It was directed by Paul Anderson. And then we had one called Welcome to Raccoon City, which, from what I understand, that one bombed and everything like that. So this one being more closer to the games, that does sound encouraging, though. And in this day and age where we've seen TV shows and movies based off of video games seem to doing a bit better, pressure may be on to try to do a better job than it was in the past. So we'll see if they can pull this off or not. We also learned that Coyote vs. Acme, the movie that Warner Brothers shelved due to certain situations, though, the sale has now been completed, and it's supposedly Catch Up Entertainment, if I'm saying that correctly, will be the one putting the movie out, and it will supposedly be out next year. Certainly interesting to see that this movie was sort of shelved by WB. Then again, the Looney Tunes The Day the Earth Blew Up was originally shelved, but Catch Up Entertainment sort of is handled the distribution of that one. And I've heard the movie so far has done pretty good at the box office. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this one plays out. It's definitely one I would definitely keep an eye out, though. And unfortunately, in sad news of this, it's reported that actor Val Kilmer has passed away due to pneumonia and all. For those who are not familiar, excuse me, he basically was known to star in several movies ranging from Tombstones. He did the movie Batman Forever when he played Bruce Wayne. But most will remember him from being in the Top Gun movie, including the original 80s Top Gun and the sequel Top Gun Maverick and all. Sorry for the coughing and all. So very unfortunate that he passed away. My heart goes out to his friends, his families, and those who may have been fan of his work and all. Okay, with the Quick My 2 Cent part now done, along with the movie and TV show part now done as well, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with the Switch 2 development kits and all. Now, there have been some reports before the Switch 2 Direct in terms of who and who hasn't had the development kits and everything like that. There have been some reports some companies have, some haven't. Excuse me. to basically reports coming out of Nintendo doing basically the so-called three-phase launch plan and everything. And now we're learning at least from a rumor that seemed to indicate Nintendo's at least approach to the whole development kit situation. From Nintendo Life, it reads that, quote, according to digital family John Linnerman, if I'm saying the name correctly, he's heard many developers are still without kit, especially medium to small developers. And Nintendo's apparently being very selective about who has access to the new hardware. One comment he said was, quote, I think there will be third-party games early on, of course. It just seems a lot of medium to small developers still do not have access to development hardware. Game media veteran Aaron Kahn also chimed in via Reddit, claiming Embracer Group didn't receive any kits from Nintendo because the Japanese video game giant deemed them too chaotic at the moment. Here's what he said, quote, Nintendo were afraid the kits will go to studios that will either be closed down and then the kits might have gone missing. He also said Ubisoft already has the kit. With this, the same companies have previously publicated support to the Nintendo hardware, and a rumor earlier this year suggested it has more than half a dozen games planned for the Switch. These updates follow a story from insider gaming reporter Tom Anderson last week, which mentioned how many third-party studios will be getting their hands on Switch 2 development kits until June as part of the three-phase launch plan. The second phase of Switch 2 rollouts will reportedly see games from third-party studios arrive between October and November. So it's kind of interesting to see, assuming this rumor is true, that Nintendo is kind of being selective and anything like that. Maybe they are trying to court, big-time third-party developers and everything like that. So there's always that possibility. The fact that Embracer Group, at least according to this rumor, supposedly like months ago, didn't get one, I kind of can see why Nintendo didn't want to do that to some extent. I mean, Embracer Group has sort of been in a very tough spot following that, I think, Saudi deal that just basically fell apart from them, that really has seen them cut some studios and let a lot of people go. I mean, we're hearing about what's happening with Crystal Dynamics, which is under Embracer Group, and also Nintendo may be thinking we may not want to give this studio our basically dev kits or anything like that. But again, things could have changed, and perhaps maybe the studios under Embracer Group now have these dev kits and all, so things could basically change and everything like that. So it's going to be interesting to see what games, outside of the Direct that we had, what we could see in October and November. And hopefully some of these medium and small development teams will get their hands on these dev kits as well, because I think they should, to be exact. So overall, very interesting rumor. Interesting, assuming it's true, in terms of Nintendo being selective of which devs will get their hands on the Switch 2 develop kits and which have to wait, let's just say, a bit longer and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2. And this one, I want to talk about my thoughts after seeing the Switch 2 Direct. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my 2 cent video for this week, or let's say my 2 cent Switch 2 edition. And for this one, I'm going to be taking a look at the Switch 2 Direct. Now, we had this Direct this Wednesday. It was basically an hour long, though, and I will say the response to this Direct has been, let's just say, mixed at best, though. While there were certainly some high moments, and there were certainly some things I did like about it, there were also some questionable decisions, and given the recent breaking news we had this week with the tariff situation, it is certainly going to throw a wrench, especially with the price point and all, though. But either way, I'm going to take a look, break this down into what I liked and what I didn't like, or mixed, or not 100% sure, though. In terms of what I liked in the Direct and all, I do like the fact that we now have official confirmations of a couple of things here, though. Excuse me. First off, we now know that the Switch would basically basically output at 1080p, I believe both in dock and handheld, and can support up to 4K, and not to mention it can support up to basically 120 frames per second, which I would say this is definitely impressive and a step above what the current Switch is. Now, granted, that does not mean every game is going to be 1080p, 120 frames per second, or 4K at 60 frames per second. Obviously, every game is going to be different. So no matter how you look at it, though, not every game is going to hit that, though. But still, it is nice to know the fact that Switch 2 can now support up to 4K and can support up to 120 frames per second, though. So that certainly is good. The other thing we learned about is that mouse control is now officially confirmed, though, and which I think this is kind of neat. And if utilized correctly, this could be actually a very interesting thing, though. I mean, the idea of maybe some games that would normally be PC-centric making their way over to the Switch 2, and also it certainly is nice about that indeed. Plus, we now know what the C button is for. It's used for basically the chat functionality that will be in the Switch 2, so that's the case, so it's not the capture button or anything like that. And of course, we now have a headphone jack, I believe, for the Switch 2 Pro controller. I believe we may have one for the Joy-Con, that detached thing, you put the Joy-Cons in. So that's probably going to be in there as well. That I assume, I'm not 100% sure, but still nice that we have headphone jacks for the Switch 2 Pro controller, though. In terms of some of the games they have shown off, though, I will say that I definitely like what I'm seeing with Mario Kart World. That definitely looks good indeed. I do kind of feel there may be somewhat of I originally thought there was probably going to be an open world kind of approach to some extent, because it seems like they're aiming for mostly you could drive anywhere or something like that. But either way, it definitely looks impressive and it's definitely on my radar. And of course, Donkey Kong Bonanza, if I'm saying the name correctly. This was, I think, a really great way to close out the Switch 2 Direct, though. The fact that we're getting finally a new 3D Donkey Kong game, something that we haven't seen since Donkey Kong 64 back in 1999, and it definitely gives off a little bit of a Mario Odyssey vibe to it to a certain degree. So I think that is definitely good indeed, and so that one is definitely on my radar. Especially, we now know games like Metroid Prime 4, which is the next game I want to talk about, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. We now know, based on that, it is a cross-gen title indeed. So that certainly is neat. Plus, the fact that now we have the ability to play this game at 4K 60 frames per second HDR, or our 1080p 120 frames per second HDR. So that one is certainly good indeed, and I definitely like that. Though I'll probably be looking at the Switch 2 title to get that if I'm able to get my hands on a Switch 2. We also saw that basically Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom will have Switch 2 editions. There will be sort of like an upgrade purchase if you have the original Switch release. I believe I read somewhere it could be around $10 to $15. But the fact that those games are run at 60 frames per second is definitely nice indeed. The other big one we saw was basically GameCube games are going to be coming to the Switch 2 via Switch's online service, which is certainly nice indeed. The Switch online service is certainly growing. It's definitely good. Now the only question is, could we see something like, say, Wii titles, or even Wii U make its way over to the Switch online service? That would be something if it does something like that. We also had some very good third-party releases or coming to the Switch, though. Elden Ring, which is certainly nice to see that one as well. Path of the Goddess, though, I played that on the Xbox Series S. I think that is a good game. Some interesting surprises like Street Fighter 6 is making its way over to the Switch 2, along with, we now know, Borderlands 4 is coming over, along with WWE 2K and NBA 2K, though. And the big one for me is also basically Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition. That one's making its way to the Nintendo Switch. That's pretty interesting, considering that game was, to some extent, demanding and went through a rough spot when it originally launched back in 2020, but certainly in a better spot than it is, though. So that one is definitely one I want to keep my eyes on. We also saw Nintendo team up with other developers like From Software with Duskblood though. Although there's some controversy surrounding that game, considering that one is more of a PvP though, and some of the response is not everyone's pleased with that. But again, that does come down to your preference and taste though. But still, very interesting to see that exclusive make its way, along with Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, basically a sequel to Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So certainly nice indeed. We're certainly getting that Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom trilogy right here as well. So certainly that one is good. And of course, Square Enix also showed up some stuff though as well with a HD remaster of Bravely Default, which is certainly nice, but knowing that Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is making its way to the Switch 2 as well. That certainly is interesting indeed, and I will say, and it depends on how well it sells, it could open the door to see maybe, depending on technical issues too, maybe Final Fantasy VII Rebirth might make its way over to the Switch 2, so that is a possibility indeed, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. In terms of what I didn't like, mixed or not 100% sure though, I will say probably the one big sticking point is going to be the price though. Now, originally we believed that it was going to be $450. This was announced during the Switch 2 presentation. However, due to what just broke though, including the pre-orders being delayed though, it is possible that price could change. It's also a possibility the price could go up though. Now, granted, we don't know, we'll have to wait, but the price point is going to be a tough pill to swallow for some out there, including some of the games. Recently, we saw that games like, I think, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe costing like around $80 to maybe Donkey Kong Bonanza costing $70 and all. However, it does seem to indicate it won't be every single game out there, but still, that did raise some eyebrows, leading to a point when, excuse me, during Nintendo's Treehouse, they had people shouting in the chat, lower the price, lower the price. So it's possible, along with the tariffs, this may have also led to some backlash towards Nintendo. So we'll see how this all plays out. But yeah, the price point for some of these games, when you take into account the current state of the economy is right now, along with tariffs, that is going to be a tough pill to swallow for some folks out there. The other thing I want to talk about is the storage. Excuse me, sorry about the coffee. The storage one. Basically, the storage is, while I do think it is an improvement being at 256 gigabytes, I will say odds are, even with that storage space, your Switch 2 is going to run out of space very quickly, especially with some of the file sizes for some of these games and everything like that. So unfortunately, you may have to get a much bigger bigger SD card though. Also, you unfortunately cannot use the micro SD card you have in your original Switch or Switch 1. Instead, you may have to end up buying basically what is often referred to as a micro SD card express instead. So that one, again, a little disappointing that we can't use the current micro SD card into the Switch 2 and everything like that. The paying for the upgrades for the Switch 1 games, that may or may not appeal to a lot of folks. And I think a lot of this goes back to when you see the strategy both PlayStation and Xbox did, with Xbox doing the smart delivery approach, where PlayStation offered, I believe a $10 upgrade, which did cause some backlash and everything. And that, obviously, I can understand why not everybody would be pleased with that. It's great that Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild are getting Switch 2 Edition upgrades. Same with, I think, other games like Kirby and the Forgotten Land and also Mario Odyssey. But when you look at how Sony handled that kind of approach compared to, and also how Microsoft handled that approach, you can see why not everybody was all down with the whole paid upgrade type of approach and everything like that. And last but not least, though, it has to do with this Nintendo Switch Welcome Tour. Now, I'm not against the game itself. I'm not against the idea of having an interactive experience where people can try out and see everything that the Switch 2 has to offer. The problem I have with this is that this is a paid download. That's right, you have to literally pay for this though. I mean, I kind of think this is a bit ridiculous, at least from my perspective, mostly because if you look at what Sony did when the PS5 came out, they had Astro's Playroom, and that was just for free. They just added that in, and it was basically, learning a bit about the PS5 and the controller and everything it had to offer. This one being a paid download, I'm kind of like, I'm not really sure about that approach compared to what Sony did with Astro's Playroom on the PS5. Overall, I would say I came away both pleased and mixed with this Direct, to be exact though. I think there were some good announcements that they made though. I think it was nice to get some confirmation in terms of the specs we know, including ranging from mouse control options for the Switch Joy-Cons, and showing off some really neat games like Metroid Prime 4 Beyond coming to the Switch 2, and a new 3D Donkey Kong and everything, and some good third-party support though at launch though. So I think there were certainly some positives though, but at the same time you cannot ignore the negatives that were there, including the price point, indeed, and some of the decisions Nintendo made. So this was sort of a controversial Direct, at least in my view. It was still good, but there are certainly questionable decisions made that Nintendo did, and that I think has got some people rubbed the wrong way. Whether or not this will have an impact when the system comes out, hopefully on June 5th, that remains to be seen. While I do think I can understand why some people are a bit upset at Nintendo over some of the decisions they made, it is worth pointing out sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, the internet is known for people that are blowing things, way out of proportion. That's not to say there isn't legitimate criticism towards Nintendo, I'm not denying that, but I do think some people tend to go a bit overboard to a certain extent. So we'll have to see what's going on in terms of when the Switch 2 officially is released on June 5th, barring any situation where Nintendo has delayed it or anything like that. So we'll have to wait to see. But my takeaway from this is though I enjoyed it, I do think I am very mixed on some of the decisions Nintendo made during this presentation and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our third and final part. And this one has to do with an interesting rumor regarding the possibility of, not only Halo Master Chief Collection coming to the Switch 2, but a possibility it may not be the complete form. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our third and final part of my 2 cent video, or this one, my 2 cent Nintendo Switch 2 edition. And for this one, we're going to be talking about the Halo Master Chief Collection on the Switch 2 and all. Now, one of the strategies we've been seeing Microsoft has been doing lately is they've been more aggressively putting a lot of their games on rival platforms and all. For the PS5, we've seen games like Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush make its way over. The original Nintendo Switch, we saw basically, Switch 1, Pendament and Grounded make its way over. Some could point to like Ori and the Will of the Wisps and Ori and the Blind Forest, to even Cuphead as another example as well. But as far as their first-party games, up to this point, or at the very least, we really have not seen those games make the jump, at least not yet. Although recently we did hear about Forza Horizon 5 starting to make its way over to the PS5, which if that's the case, it does open the door to the possibility of other games like Halo and Gears and all. And I wouldn't be surprised to see those games make it onto other systems and all, considering the approach Microsoft is taking. Some agree with it, some disagree with it, to be exact though. Well, we have seen Microsoft recently talk about how they are all in and bringing some of their games over to the Switch 2 and all. One in particular that is certainly would catch some attention if it does happen is Halo, particularly the Halo Master Chief Collection. There are rumors going around that those games could make its way over to the Switch 2 and the PS5. But a new rumor that seems to be popping up seems to indicate that if those games do come over, especially to the Switch 2, don't expect every single entry, or at least that was in the Master Chief Collection when that was originally released back on the Xbox One, make its way over to either the PS5 or the Switch 2. In an article from Nintendo Life, it reads that, quote, excuse me, according to The Verge Tom Warren, during an episode of the Xbox Chew podcast, however, the Master Chief Collection may not launch on Switch 2 in its complete form. What this means exactly is unclear, as Tom was being purposely vague, but essentially this is what it had to say. And I quote, I don't know if it's going to be a collection in the sense I wouldn't think of it as every game put in that way. That's probably the most I could say on it. So, assuming what Tom Warren is saying is true, assuming, let's just say the Master Chief Collection is officially coming to the Switch 2, let's say if that does happen at all. I mean, there are many ways you could look at this. It is possible that one possibility could be that the games could be sold separately. You may have maybe like one or two or something like that put into maybe like a Switch cart and everything like that. On the other hand, it is also possible we could have a scenario where it could be you have the cart, but you'll have to download, most or the rest of the game, or the dreaded empty box with a piece of paper and everything like that. It is worth pointing out, that Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition is supposedly going to be the full game in the DLC in basically a 64-bit gigabyte cart, which is pretty impressive from CD Projekt Red. And the fact that that may not happen on the Switch 2 is pretty amazing and everything. But in either case, though, there are many ways you could read this at all. It also possibly could be a digital-only release, so that is a possibility too. But again, we won't know until Microsoft makes the official announcement on whether or not something like Halo Master Chief Collection coming to the Switch 2 and everything like that. Assuming this rumor, like I said, is true, it is a little bit disappointing because I would have liked to have the full collection into one cartridge if that was possible and everything like that. But obviously that may not be a possibility. So we'll have to wait and see until we hear the official announcement from Microsoft if they choose to make an announcement or anything like that. So overall, I would say, assuming this rumor is true, it can be disappointing. It could be disappointing to some folks out there, but it's also possible there may be different ways Microsoft could be approaching this at the same time as well. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent, or shall I say My 2 Cent Switch 2 edition for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about the rumors about the possibly Nintendo being selective of who gets the Switch 2 dev kits though? Do you think this rumor is true? Do you think this is the right approach that Nintendo should make? Or should they allow developers who want a request for a dev kit get a dev kit though? What are your thoughts about the Switch 2 Direct? Did you watch the presentation yourself? Were you pleased with what they were showing? Were you disappointed in any way? Do you think some of the decisions Nintendo announced during the Direct were controversial or questionable at its best? Do you think there are some legitimate do you think some of the criticism is legitimate towards Nintendo over what was announced during the Switch 2 Direct? Or do you believe that some folks are blowing this way out of proportion? And what are your thoughts about Halo Master Chief Collection on Switch 2? Do you think this rumor is true, as we may not get the complete collection? Do you think it's false? If it turns out we're not getting the complete collection, what approach do you think Microsoft could take? Are they going to take it by selling the game individually? Or is it going to be maybe like you buy the game and you have to download the rest kind of approach? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you'd like. You can do it through PayPal Me or Patreon or Steam Labs. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. Excuse me. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye.